In today's episode of the Pathmark Presents podcast, I got a very interesting guest here with me today. I'm with Hally Darnell, and she's heading over from the folks over at Vitally. She's a senior marketing manager over there, and since Vitally is all about customer success, we want to, learn how B2B teams leverage Vitally to have happy customers and happy customers that actually stay on the products. So, Hally, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to it.
Of course. So maybe give us a 360 overview in your own words. What is Vitally all about?
Yes. So 2-second pitch is that Vitally is a customer success platform for B2B SaaS. So you can think of us as like a post-sale CRM. We're a customer success platform for B2B SaaS organizations all over the world. With Vitally, customer success teams can access real-time data from across their tech stack all in one tab, integrate the customer experience directly into project management and communication tools, like Intercom, for example, or product road mapping tools like Product Board or Pendo, build actionable reports and contextualize customer insights. And it's all backed by very, very powerful automation.
That sounds very, very good. Can you tell us a little bit about the types of organizations that actually would benefit the most? Is there a certain scale that you need to have? Is there a certain industry where it fits really well? Maybe tell us about sort of, a client that fits really well into the world of Vitally.
Yeah, great question. So I can see this definitely expanding quite a bit in the future, but at the present moment, our ideal customer is in the B2B SaaS space. So we pretty specifically serve technology companies that are selling into other businesses and the customer success teams there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I mean, it's quite I would say it's quite natural to the topic that you would, help them with, but is it typically a customer success lead that would be reaching out, or does it come from maybe even higher up, the C-suite? Who was typically sort of the champion for Vitally to bring it on board?
Yeah. So I guess I would start by saying that customer success is like a relatively new industry compared to marketing and sales organizations, for example, or at least on the like go-to-market side. Mm-hmm. So who we typically, our decision makers tend to be director level of customer success and above. So heads of CS, directors of CS, manager, customer success. And client success is another kind of like interchangeable phrase in there as well. Because it is a newer industry, there's a lot of different titles, but not to be confused with like client support or client services. Those tend to be pretty separated, even if they report into the same department. As far as the C-suite, we are seeing a lot more companies have like a chief customer officer, a chief experience officer in the C-suite. But a lot of the time, we see it rolling up into either like the CEO at like maybe an SMB company or a CRO at maybe a larger company. So it does depend. And I would say our champions tend to be customer success managers. So that's that like individual contributor on a customer success team. And they're the ones who are really spending their whole day in our product. I'd also say there's a rise in customer success operations roles, and that would be a great buyer for us as well. And they tend to roll up into like a RevOps organization.
Now, how do these folks actually learn about Vitally? What would you say is sort of the typical channels they would walk through in order to, get aware and actually ultimately getting started with Vitally?
That is a great question. And that's something we're even more focused on than ever right now is just brand awareness. We're in a pretty competitive space. There are a handful of other platforms that identify as customer success platforms. So brand awareness has always been, but it's coming to the forefront more than ever, is something that we're really, really focused on. To date, you would probably see us do quite a bit of paid social advertising. So a lot of LinkedIn, obviously that's where a big B2B audience lives. Mm-hmm. But we also are really focused on like the content and thought leadership side as well. And there's a few different distribution channels that we work through to like get that content out there. So for example, we have a webinar series that's kind of my pride and joy and something that we've been putting a lot of effort into lately. As of late, it's our Scale or Fail webinar series where we're bringing on customer success leaders from tons of different organizations, integration partners, our own customers, really any like CS leaders in the space. And we're really distributing that again on paid social, quite a bit of sponsored newsletter advertising, which is one of my favorite channels. I think that's kind of a slept on channel in general. And email database marketing as well. But going into 2023, we're hoping to do a lot more sponsored events and just partnering with our many integration partners and just like customer success organizations more in general, because there is just like a big customer success ecosystem. And I think that comes from a place of customer success being a newer industry. So they've really just leaned into creating like as much content and community around it as possible.
You mentioned there the content distribution. Maybe just give us like one or two pointers, like marketers that are currently, fed up of generating content that doesn't get really distributed around. Like, is there one or two pointers you could give them, on what you guys are doing for the content distribution?
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess my first pointer would be try to think outside of the box and even outside of the marketing box of where this promotion could live. So don't forget about email signatures and updating like your most popular sales sequences with, or creating snippets even, and really leveraging like your relationship with the sales team to like remind them that these types of pieces of content exist, and they're a great distribution channel. Your sales team is always going to be a great distribution channel, and even though it's maybe like a lower volume of who they're getting in front of, they definitely have a bit more sway than a marketing email coming from Hally at Vitally. So that's the first tip, and then I'd say the second tip.
It was already a good one.
Yeah, I'd say the second tip, equally as important, is to really focus on like delivering value. So when you're attending a Vitally webinar, it's never about pushing or promoting Vitally as a product. Like, it's very, very much about delivering actual value, and customer success people tend to be really big on like tactical advice. So that's kind of the direction like that I like to like point our panelists in when they're answering questions. And we've had panels where we haven't even, aside from myself, because I'm typically moderating them, where we haven't even had like Vitally representation on the panel, because it's really about delivering value. And we tend to see just such good engagement from those webinars, so that when we finally do reach out from sales or marketing, you already have people kind of, the word I want to use is enamored, and I don't think that's it, but you already have people that are excited about how you're thinking about customer success. So leading with actual real value and value-driven content.
Very good. I mean, you mentioned a couple of channels there, and obviously a lot of them point back to the website. Like, how do you think about the role of the website for Vitally? What's your take on it? How do you think about it as a marketer?
On our marketing site or like our app?
No, the marketing site, vitally.io, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's really, I think about our marketing site. For me, I spend some time in the Vitally app, less so than like our product marketing team. I should really be spending more time in there. But I'd say our website, I just think, is like our home base for where we're pointing everything towards. So we don't even leverage like subdomains to the extent that I know a lot of marketing teams in general tend to use. So we're always directing people to our marketing site. I think it can get like confusing when companies will like whip up new sites or whip up new subdomains of where their content lives. So like, for example, if your only blog for your entire company is like living on Medium, I don't necessarily think leveraging Medium is a bad thing, but to like shift your audience anywhere other than your site is kind of a missed opportunity. So I definitely think of it as our home base for everything. And then obviously we're running, as most marketing teams are, running a lot of retargeting and lookalike off of like visitors to our audience. So driving our audience there is always the goal. Yeah. So
makes sense.
Yeah.
Very cool. Now, we talked a bit about sort of what you guys are doing. We talked about the website a little bit. We talked about growth. I would love to switch gears a little bit and talk about your journey, right, as a marketer.
Sure.
Maybe when we get started on that, like there's so much content out there, right, for marketers. You could read case studies and blogs and listen to podcasts all day long. Like, what is it that you do where you find high quality information to keep on educating yourself as a marketer?
That is a wonderful question. I live in New York City. I live in Brooklyn. And I start by saying that because my biggest inspiration in marketing is just all of the marketing, especially like out of home marketing that's around me. And that's kind of always like my North Star of like why I know I'm doing the right thing and why I'm in the right career is because if you talk to any of my friends, I will literally be stopped in my tracks and taking pictures of advertisements on like a bus stop, just because that's what gets me really excited. Going on the subway, I've seen so many like Asana and Notion ads lately. And that's what really inspires me. And I think that's always like, you have an ad week, for example, who's like writing up about like the best out of home advertising that they've seen, but I'm experiencing it and I'm living it. So I think that's where I kind of always see what's new, and I'm more of a visual kind of learner more than anything. And I think another example of that is I'm a shopaholic, and I'm a big consumer. Capitalism really is like that. So I spend a lot of time shopping online, and I always like to take cues working in B2B marketing from like what B2C or D2C marketing is doing. And I think they're always kind of on the cutting edge, and sometimes so far on the cutting edge where you're like, that's just not applicable to anything that I could do now. Like, you see something a lot lately, especially on B2C, is like shifting back more toward like nostalgia. And I think that's kind of the last thing that like B2B tech consumers want to see, is like taking a nostalgia trip, unless it's, like a single image ad or like a video ad. I think that could be interesting. But even just saying that, you kind of do see the ties. It's like we might not necessarily update our website to look like an old NetSuite site, but we might, do an ad talking about nostalgia. I've seen JustWorks, who's one of my favorite companies in the B2B SaaS space. Never thought I'd have one of those. And they are doing like great nostalgia ads right now. And I think that's an example of like taking a cue from B2C. And I don't know that answers your initial question, but I love
shows what you do.
Yeah, I love reading books on actually more like sales and leadership than anything, as opposed to marketing, just because I think marketing is always changing in a way that's like more science driven and constantly changing versus like sales, where it's like you have these fundamental techniques and they're getting updated from time to time, but they've foundationally stayed the same. So I think like reading books about that is helpful, just because it's not changing as frequently.
Yeah, makes sense. As we're slowly approaching the end of the interview, I got some rapid fire questions to get to know you a little bit better. Are you ready for those?
Yes, I think so.
Actually, right on the topic, what is the last book that you read?
Last book that I read. I like to read books that make me feel delusional and escape from reality. So it was like a historical fiction book. What was it called? A historical fiction book. I'll follow up. I want to say, yeah, I'll follow up. I can't think of the title off the top of my head.
No worries.
Maybe goes to show how long it's been since I finished a book.
No worries. What's one single thing that your company is focused on the most at the moment?
Focused on the most? I would say collaboration, and what customer success, truly collaborating with customers looks like, and not in, these are rapid fire. So I'm going to say collaboration, and I'm going to stop there.
If there would be no boundaries in tech, what's the one thing that you would fix for your role as a marketer?
I guarantee 75% of people in all of your interviews have said this, but attribution, it's just literally the worst. It's the worst. I
think you're right. Actually, your estimation is pretty accurate.
Yeah.
For the very last question, right? If we would do a little bit of time travel, right? And we go back to your very first day joining Vitally. What's the one advice that you would give yourself for your journey with Vitally?
Rapid fire. a good question. I actually will say that on my first day at Vitally, I was doing the thing that I think that we've all had occur in the last 2 years, which I was coming off of having a job where I was just feeling really burnt out, and it was really nothing about the job, just everything that was going on in the world. So I think I would have told myself, stop beating yourself up for not feeling like 3,000% motivated to wake up every day. And starting a new job didn't just cancel out the burnout. And that it would get better, and that I would not be burnt out at one point. And I'm so happy to be in that place now. But yeah, it would be to not beat myself up for not feeling very intrinsically motivated. Yeah.
Oh, I think that's actually, really appreciate the transparency. I think it will speak to a lot of guys that are listening in that have very similar experiences. So Hally, I really appreciate you took the time with us today. I want to give you the very last word. If somebody would be forgetting all that we discussed about Vitally, what's the one thing people should remember?
The one thing people should remember about Vitally is that customer success teams are under-resourced, and they need to have, in the same way that sales teams have Salesforce and a million other tools in their tech stack, customer success teams need to be equally as resourced, and retaining your current customers is the best thing you could possibly do for your business. So you need to invest in that side of the business. And there's a lot of resources out there to do it, Vitally being one of the best ones. And I really stand behind that with everything that I have.
Thanks a lot for being a guest on Platform Presents.
Thanks.